The dining room was alive with the smell of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread, the golden light from the chandelier casting a warm glow over the table laden with travel brochures. I couldn't contain my excitement as I laid out the glossy images of sandy beaches and vibrant sunsets. "Look at this one, Mom. We could explore the market here, and Dad, there's a zipline through the jungle." I could feel my heart racing, a symphony of anticipation playing in my chest. My parents exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable, yet I hoped for a spark of enthusiasm. "Sounds nice, honey," my father said, his voice flat as he absent-mindedly picked at a piece of chicken. My mother nodded, but her eyes drifted to her phone, the glow illuminating her face. I swallowed hard, trying to brush off the nagging feeling that their disinterest was more than just a fleeting moment. The table felt heavy with unspoken words, and I couldn't shake the dull thud of disappointment in my chest. As the dinner progressed, I tried to keep the mood light. "Imagine us on the beach, just relaxing," I laughed, but the sound felt forced in the air. My mother's polite smile didn't reach her eyes, and my father's dismissive nods felt like walls closing in on me. I wanted them to share in my excitement, to echo my joy, but their indifference hung between us like an invisible barrier. The evening wore on, filled with awkward laughter and empty exchanges. I wondered if it was always like this, if I had simply overlooked the cracks in our family facade. Each time I caught a glimpse of their disconnection, my heart ached a little more. In that moment, I started to question everything. Were they even looking forward to our trip? Or had I been foolish to believe this vacation would bring us closer? I had envisioned us as a family, laughing together, creating memories. Instead, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between hope and despair. The thought of our upcoming trip should have filled me with joy, yet a cloud of confusion loomed over me. My excitement was slowly being replaced by a simmering tension, and I couldn't help but wonder if I would be left standing alone when the time came to board that plane. The living room felt stifling, a mix of familiar scents and the faint whir of the ceiling fan providing little relief from the tension that hung in the air. I sat curled up on the couch, clutching a travel brochure, my heart racing with a blend of excitement and anxiety. My parents had promised to share in the joy of this trip I had organized, yet their earlier indifference weighed heavily on my mind. I could almost hear the echoes of my own hopeful laughter from the dinner table, now replaced by a quiet dread that seeped into every corner of the room. As I glanced at the family photos lining the walls, smiling faces frozen in time, I recalled the warmth of those moments. Yet the nostalgia felt tainted, overshadowed by the fear that our family bond was fraying. I picked at the frayed edges of the brochure, tracing the glossy images of idyllic beaches and bustling markets. Would we ever experience those together? Or was I simply grasping at straws, hoping for a connection that had long since faded? Later that evening, we gathered for dinner, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. The table was set with my favorite dishes, but all I could focus on was the silence that lingered between us. My father's dismissive comments about the trip echoed in my head, and I struggled to keep my spirits high. "What if we got a boat tour?" I suggested, forcing a smile. My mother nodded, but her gaze was distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. I felt the familiar pang of disappointment as my father shrugged, his fork clinking against the plate without a hint of enthusiasm. The conversation dwindled into awkward pauses, punctuated only by the sound of forks scraping against china. I tried to engage them, recounting tales of past vacations filled with laughter and adventure, but their eyes glazed over, and I felt more isolated than ever. I wanted so desperately for us to bond, to relish in the excitement of what was to come, yet every attempt felt futile. I could see the disconnection in their faces, a silent acknowledgement that this trip was perhaps just another obligation, a box to check rather than a cherished memory to create. As I looked around the table, I realized that what I desired most was not just a vacation, but a rekindling of our family spirit, something that seemed increasingly out of reach. My heart sank further, and I felt a growing frustration that threatened to spill over. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing. How had we drifted so far apart? The anticipation of the trip morphed into annoying anxiety, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to embark on this journey alone, even if physically my parents were by my side. The airport loomed before me, an expansive cavern of bright signs and echoing announcements. I stood at the entrance, clutching my suitcase, the faint scent of coffee and pastries wafting through the air. My palms were clammy as I scanned the crowd, my heart racing with anticipation. Each face that passed was a reminder of my parents' absence, a gaping void where their familiarity should have been. How could they leave me here alone? The vibrant energy of the terminal, usually comforting, felt like a cruel joke. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up with their names. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the call button. What would I say? "Hey, where are you guys?" I imagine their responses dismissive, vague, or perhaps just silence. I swallowed hard, attempting to stave off the anger bubbling within me. I dialed their number, heart pounding as the ringtone echoed in my ear, each ring amplifying the pit of dread in my stomach. When the voicemail finally answered, I felt the weight of betrayal settle around my shoulders like a heavy cloak. My mind raced back to the conversations we'd had about this trip. I remembered my father's half-hearted assurances, his eyes flickering with disinterest, while my mother's distracted nods haunted me. They had agreed to come. I had poured my heart into planning this vacation, envisioning laughter, shared experiences, moments that would mend the fraying edges of our relationship. Instead, I was left standing in an airport, surrounded by families embracing, laughing, while I felt utterly alone. As I walked toward the exit, the glass doors slid open, revealing the bright sunlight that felt almost mocking. I blinked against the glare, my heart aching with a mix of shock and anger. How could they do this to me? The warmth of the sun contrasted sharply with the cold realization that my parents had abandoned the trip I had so eagerly anticipated. I needed answers. I couldn't let this slide without confronting them. The car ride home was a blur of emotions, the familiar streets of my neighborhood flying past without registering. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white from the pressure. The tension in my chest tightened with every passing moment. Once home, I paced around the living room, glancing at the family photos on the walls, moments frozen in time that now felt like a cruel reminder of what we once shared. I finally sat down, taking deep breaths to calm the storm within me. I had to confront them. I couldn't let their absence dictate my feelings any longer. It was time to demand the answers I deserved, to voice the hurt that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. The living room felt like an arena, tension crackling in the air as I awaited my parents' arrival for our family meeting. The familiar sense of old wood and the faint musk of unlit candles filled the space, yet it did little to soothe the storm brewing inside me. I had arranged the chairs in a semicircle, a subconscious attempt to create a safe space for confrontation, though I was acutely aware that no amount of preparation could ease the truth I was about to face. With each passing moment, my heart thudded against my ribs, anticipation mingling with fear as I recalled the empty seat beside me at the airport, a stark reminder of their absence. When my parents finally walked through the door, their expressions were a mix of weariness and indifference. "We're here. Let's get this over with," my father said, his tone clipped, while my mother averted her gaze, tracing the patterns on the carpet with her eyes. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to retreat into silence. I needed clarity to cut through the fog of misunderstanding that enveloped our family. "I need to know why you didn't come. Why did you leave me alone at the airport?" My voice trembled, the words spilling out before I could contain them. My father shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if he could physically ward off my questions. "We had our reasons, Olivia. It's not as simple as you think," he replied, dismissing my pain with a wave of his hand. I felt anger simmering beneath my skin, a fiery resolve igniting within me. I couldn't let them deflect my feelings any longer. What reasons could justify this? I pressed, my heart racing as I confronted the shadows of unspoken grievances that hung between us. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We didn't want to go. It was never about you." Her words pierced through my confusion, revealing a truth I hadn't wanted to accept. I felt the weight of betrayal settle in my chest, heavy and suffocating. As the conversation continued, I dug deeper into my parents' evasive responses, hoping to unearth the secrets that lay buried beneath their dismissiveness. I could sense their reluctance to confront the reality of our family dynamics, their avoidance thickening the air between us. My resolve hardened. I had to understand what had led us to this point. Why were they so unwilling to share their true feelings? With each question, I peeled back layers of silence, unwilling to let them sidestep my inquiries. "I deserve to know the truth," I exclaimed, my voice echoing in the stillness of the room. The confrontation was a dance of emotions, and with every exchange, I felt both vulnerable and empowered, each revelation pushing me closer to the confrontation I had long avoided. The meeting ended with unresolved tension, a shaky truce forged in the fires of confrontation. I retreated to my room, grabbing my journal to pour out my feelings. The ink flowed like my emotions, a cathartic release as I penned the chaos that had erupted within me. I was determined to uncover the secrets that held my family captive, to understand the pain that had driven a wedge between us. My heart raced with a mix of confusion and resolve. I could no longer remain in the shadows. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The coffee shop buzzed with the hum of conversations, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloping me like a warm embrace. I sat at a small table by the window, nervously tapping my fingers on the ceramic mug, waiting for Sarah. The sunlight illuminated the scattered sugar packets and my travel brochure, remnants of a trip that felt increasingly distant. I hoped this meeting would serve as a bridge over the chasm that had formed between my parents and me. I needed to share my thoughts with someone who understood the weight of this turmoil. When Sarah arrived, her face lit up with a comforting smile, yet I could see the concern etched into her features. "Hey, Olivia. How are you holding up?" she asked, sliding into the chair opposite me. I forced a smile, but the tension in my chest tightened. "I don't know, Sarah. I just want to try and mend things with them, but it feels like I'm pushing against a wall. They're so resistant to talking." As I recounted my attempts to reach out to my parents, I felt frustration bubbling within me. "I called them earlier, you know. I thought maybe they would be open to a conversation, something light to ease the tension, but it was like talking to a wall. They didn't even want to discuss the trip. It's infuriating." I leaned forward, my voice rising slightly in exasperation. Sarah nodded empathetically, her eyes reflecting the understanding of a friend who had been through similar strains with her own family. "Maybe you need to approach them differently," she suggested, her tone gentle but firm. "Instead of pushing for answers right away, try to create a space where they feel safe to open up. You know how your mom hates confrontation. Maybe start with something small." I pondered her words, feeling the flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps I could find a way to ease into the conversation, to coax out the unspoken truths without triggering their defenses. After our coffee, I felt a determined resolve building inside me. I decided to invite my parents for dinner, a familiar setting that might allow for a softer approach. I spent the afternoon preparing their favorite dishes, the scents of garlic and herbs filling the air, weaving through my memories of happier times. I envisioned sitting around the table, laughter mingling with the aroma of food, creating an atmosphere ripe for connection. Yet as the clock ticked closer to dinner time, anxiety crept in, chilling my resolve. Would they even show up? Would they be able to put aside their walls long enough to engage in an honest conversation? As I set the table, I recalled past family dinners filled with laughter and warmth, yet the specter of my parents' dismissal loomed over me. I gripped the edge of the table, my heart racing with anticipation and dread. When they finally arrived, I hoped for openness, but their expressions quickly dashed my hopes. The same indifference that had shadowed our previous interactions reappeared, leaving me feeling isolated despite their physical presence. "Dinner smells great, Olivia," my father remarked, his tone lacking enthusiasm. I forced a smile, my heart sinking as I realized that no amount of effort could fix the rift that had formed. As we sat down, I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the conversation, but I was met with the same dismissive attitudes. My heart sank further with every passing moment, knowing that my attempts for peace were slipping through my fingers, leading me toward the inevitable confrontation I had feared. The dim light in my room felt oppressive, casting long shadows that danced along the walls as I rifled through a box of old family albums. I was searching for something, any hint that could explain my parents' behavior, when I stumbled upon a faded envelope tucked away in the corner. The paper felt brittle under my fingers, and the faint scent of musty memories wafted up as I pulled it free. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, addressed to my mother. My breath caught in my throat as I read the familiar, looping handwriting. It was from my grandmother, a woman I had only known through stories, who had passed years ago. The words blurred as I read the opening lines, each sentence revealing family secrets I had never imagined. "You know I never wanted you to have children, Margaret. It was meant to be just us forever." A cold shiver raced down my spine, the implications gnawing at me. Questions bubbled in my mind. Had my mother felt pressured to conform to expectations? Did her own mother's wishes dictate how she raised me? I could feel the anger boiling within me, a mix of betrayal and determination igniting a fire I hadn't realized was smoldering. As I processed this discovery, the air around me thickened with tension. I could hear the distant hum of my parents' voices echoing in the living room, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I needed to confront them. This was the truth I had been searching for, the key to understanding their evasiveness and emotional distance. I stood up, clutching the letter tightly, each word a dagger of resolve piercing through the haze of confusion. I strode towards the living room, my heart pounding in my ears as I prepared to face my parents. The familiar scents of old books and polished wood greeted me, but they felt tainted now, a reminder of the secrets hidden within our walls. I found them sitting on the couch, their expressions a mix of weariness and indifference, as if they were merely waiting for the inevitable confrontation to unfold. "We need to talk," I began, my voice steady but laced with an underlying intensity. Their heads turned toward me, surprise flickering in their eyes, but I pressed on. "I found something, and it changes everything." The letter trembled in my grip, a physical manifestation of the truths I was about to unleash. You can't keep avoiding this. It's time to face what's really been going on in our family. The weight of my words hung in the air, and I could almost taste the impending confrontation, a moment that would either shatter our fragile facade or finally lead us to healing. The truth was out there, and I was ready to confront it head on. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the turning point in our tangled family narrative. No more silence. I had to understand, and they would finally have to answer for the secrets they had buried for so long. Sente-me na minha mesa de trabalho, cercada por papéis e canetas. A luz suave de lampada iluminava as páginas em branco, mas minha mente estava em qualquer lugar, e não ser ali. A frustração pulsava em meu peito, e pleno começo a tomar forma. Enquanto olhava para o mural de fotos de família, cada imagem refletia a momento que eu desejava recuperar, mas que parecia cada vez mais distante. Eu precisava de jeito de confrontar meus pais sobre a sua deslildade, e isso exigia mais do que apenas palavras. Como uma caneta na mão, comecei a rabiscar a esboço de como eu queria que a conversa ocorresse. Primeiro eu preciso chamá-las para encontro. Lugar familiar, onde eles se sintam à vontade, talvez durante o jantar algo simples como sempre fazemos. Mas desta vez não seria apenas uma refeição. Seria campo de batalha, pensei, a determinação crescendo dentro de mim. A ideia de finalmente expor que eu senti-me dava frio na barriga, mas era frio que se misturava como impulso feroz de buscar a verdade. Lembrei-me de conversa que tive com Sarah no café, seu olhar compreensivo enquanto eu desabafava. Eu não posso deixar que eles se esquivam novamente. Preciso ser firme, mas também quero que eles sintam o peso das minhas palavras. Não posso deixar que minha emoção se transforme em raiva, pois isso só os afastaria mais. Meu coração acelerou ao considerar a possibilidade de que a conversa poderia não ser como planejado, ou que aconteceria se eles se fechassem, ou se tentassem desviar novamente. A ideia de confrontou-me deixava ansiosa, mas não iria requer. Eu mereço a verdade, e se isso significar que preciso ser mais audaciosa, então que assim seja, murmurei para mim mesma, o eco de minha determinação preenchendo o espaço ao redor. Como uma respiração profunda, escrevi o que eu queria dizer, porque vocês não foram, o que realmente está acontecendo entre nós. A cada frase que eu anotava, senti como se estivesse moldando não apenas diálogo, mas também uma coragem que precisaria para enfrentar meus pais. Eu estava pronta para a batalha que se aproximava, decidida a não ser mais uma vez silenciada, e que essa vez eu não me deixaria abalar. Enquanto o relógio avançava, a ansiedade se transformava em uma expectativa elétrica. A ideia de finalmente confrontá-las me energizava. Não era apenas plano. Era minha chance de recuperar o que eu tinha perdido, a conexão e a verdade que tanto buscava. Como os papéis diante de mim, sabia que estava prestes a entrar em território desconhecido, mas isso não me intimidava. Eu não requeria mais. The living room felt like a battlefield as I faced my parents, their expressions a mix of defensiveness and weariness. The familiar scent of old wood and faint candle musk filled the air, but the tension was palpable, electrifying the space between us. I stood, heart racing, clutching my notes like a lifeline, feeling the weight of my unspoken words pressing against my chest. I had rehearsed this moment countless times, yet the reality was far more daunting than I had imagined. I need to know, why didn't you come to the airport? My voice trembled, barely masking the hurt that laced each word. My father shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if to shield himself from my gaze. We had our reasons, Olivia, he replied dismissively, his tone clipped and defensive. Anger surged within me, igniting a fire that I had kept at bay for too long. What reasons could justify abandoning me like that? I pressed, my pulse quickening as I fought against the urge to retreat. My mother finally met my gaze, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was never about you, we just didn't want to go, she whispered, the admission cutting through me like a knife. Betrayal washed over me, raw and suffocating. The memories of our family vacations flooded my mind, laughter and joy now twisted into a painful reminder of what I had lost. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. I poured my heart into planning this trip, hoping it would bring us together. Instead, I was left standing alone, abandoned. How could you do this to me? Their silence spoke volumes, and I could feel the walls closing in. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead I fought to keep my composure. I needed them to understand the depth of my pain. You can't just dismiss my feelings. This ends with me demanding the truth, I declared, my voice rising, each word a cathartic release echoing in the stillness of the room. The confrontation unfolded like a storm, emotions crashing against each other as my parents attempted to defend their actions, but their justifications felt hollow. I could see their discomfort, the way they shifted under my scrutiny, and I realized that this moment was not just about seeking closure, but reclaiming my voice in a family that had silenced me for too long. As the argument intensified, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, I was standing my ground, refusing to be written off as just another disappointment. The air was thick with unresolved tension, but I was determined to break through the barriers of silence, to uncover the truths that lay hidden beneath the surface, no matter how painful they might be. In the depths of that confrontation, I felt the weight of my parents' secrets pressing against me, and I knew that this was just the beginning of a much-needed reckoning between us. The aftermath of our confrontation hung heavily in the air, a thick mist of unresolved emotions settling around me. I sat on the edge of my bed, the soft fabric of the quilt beneath me feeling both familiar and foreign as I replayed the events of the evening in my mind. My parents had left the living room in silence, their expressions a mix of anger and shame, and I could still feel the echoes of our words reverberating in my chest. The confrontation had been explosive, but it was only the beginning of what I knew would be a long road to healing. In the following days, a fragile quiet settled over our home. The once vibrant conversations were replaced by an uncomfortable silence, each of us grappling with the weight of our truths. I found myself retreating into my thoughts, reflecting on the revelations that had surfaced during our heated exchange. My parents, too, seemed to be wrestling with their guilt, their avoidance of confrontation now casting a long shadow over our household. I caught glimpses of them, my father staring blankly at the television, my mother lost in her thoughts while washing the dishes, each moment a reminder of our fractured bond. I decided to take a step towards reconciliation. One evening, I gathered the courage to approach my parents again. I found them in the living room, the glow of the lamp illuminating their weary faces. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady yet tentative. They exchanged glances, and after a moment my mother nodded, her expression softening. We sat together, the air thick with unspoken words, but this time I was determined to guide the conversation toward understanding. As we spoke, I shared my feelings of abandonment and hurt, and to my surprise, my parents began to open up about their own fears and regrets. My father admitted how overwhelmed he felt by the expectations of family life, while my mother confessed her fear of conflict. The walls that had kept us apart began to crumble, and with each revelation, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was as if we were finally peeling back the layers of misunderstanding that had suffocated our relationship for so long. By the end of our conversation, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. We were still navigating the complexities of our emotions, but I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. We had begun to bridge the chasm that had formed between us, and while the journey ahead would be challenging, I knew we were no longer alone in our struggles. Together, we could forge a new path, one built on honesty and understanding, as we sought to heal not just the wounds of the past, but to redefine what family meant to us moving forward. As I reflected on that evening, I realized that this was the closure I had longed for, not an end, but the beginning of a renewed connection, one that would require effort but was undeniably worth pursuing. In the quiet aftermath of our confrontation, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this pivotal moment. The sun streamed through my window, casting golden rays across the room, illuminating the remnants of my parents' absence and the shadows of our past. I felt a strange mix of hope and apprehension as I sat at my desk, pen in hand, ready to document the raw emotions that had surfaced. Each word I wrote was a step toward understanding, a testament to the tumultuous path we had traveled. The silence in our home had morphed into a tentative peace as we all navigated the complexities of our feelings. I could hear my parents moving around the house, their footsteps echoing softly, a reminder that while we were still mending our relationship, we were no longer in isolation. We were learning to communicate, slowly peeling back the layers of hurt that had built up over the years. I hoped we could create new memories, ones that would replace the bitterness of the past with the sweetness of understanding. As I wrapped up my reflections, I felt a sense of closure wash over me, not as an end, but as a new beginning. I realized that healing takes time, and while the road ahead might be fraught with challenges, there was also potential for growth and reconciliation. I closed my journal, a smile creeping onto my face as I envisioned the family dinners to come, filled with laughter and open conversations. In that moment, I understood that the journey of rebuilding our family bond was just beginning, and I felt ready to embrace it. If you found yourself on a similar path, grappling with family dynamics, know that you're not alone. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell.